the really neat concepts embedded in the policy governance system reminds me of a childhood story. The book was about the incredible adventures of Professor Brainstorm, a smart but wacky professor who was always coming up with great inventions. At one point, he managed to invent a time machine, and here's how he explained how the time machine would work. He said, let's say you traveled from point A to point B, and normally it took you an hour. Now, if you were to travel at twice the speed, you could get from A to B in half the time, or 30 minutes. If you were to travel at twice that speed again, you could get from A to B in half that time, or 15 minutes. Double your speed once more, and you could get from A to B in 7.5 minutes, and so on. Now, if you were to keep going faster and faster, he said, you would actually be able to get to your destination before you even left. And that was the trick to time travel. Now, of course, Professor Brainstorm's theory about time travel involves a bit of fuzzy logic. However, there is a trick inside the policy governance system for boards that is nothing short of logical and quite miraculous at the same time. This neat trick lets you speed up the operations of your organization beyond what you might have ever thought possible. Let's say you're working now in the traditional mode of governance, where the CEO or staff prepare projects, programs, budgets, and other decisions, and then take them to the board for approval. Since we're talking about the speed of your operations and your progress, let's consider the time it takes to get from having your project or program ready to go and the time it takes to get board approval. Now, if everything goes well, you would factor in the time it takes to prepare the background documentation for the board to review, the time it takes to get the item on the board agenda, the time for board meetings to read the background information and to think about it, and then the time it takes for the board to meet, to consider the project, and to give the project its approval. Now let's say your board meets quite frequently, and this duration, from project readiness to project approval, takes an average of 1 month. Next, let's imagine that you hire some kind of efficiency expert or board consultant who says, I can help your organization cut that time in half. In other words, we can create a way for you to go from being ready to move forward with a project to actually being able to proceed, having been given board approval, in an average time of 2 weeks instead of 1 month. Well, that would be a significant improvement, wouldn't it? You'd save an average of 2 weeks per decision having to go to the board for approval and just be able to get going with things that much more quickly. Now, let's imagine another expert comes along and offers you a way to improve that speed from an average of 2 weeks to just 1 week. Now, staff can prepare a project and bang, 1 week later you've got board approval and you can move forward with it. Hey, your board might be having meetings every week, but that would be great. Then one day you meet a policy governance consultant and you tell her the story of how you've shaved down the time it takes to get board approval for staff decisions from an average of 1 month to an average of 1 week. And she looks you in the eye and she says, that's nothing. Follow the simple steps of policy governance and I can get you written approval for all staff projects, programs, and budgets before they even have a chance to think of them. You will have a board that is so far ahead of staff on everything that there no longer needs to be any delay between the time a project is designed and the time it can actually be implemented. Not only will you be able to get so much more done so much more quickly, but you'll be able to do it in a way that meets a very, very high standard of accountability and makes a meaningful difference in the world. Sure, it's possible, and I invite you to ask me how. Call me anytime at 1-877-847-4552. This is Susan Mogensen with Brown Dog Consulting.